Welcome to Loudoun Now Sports Talk. My name's Kurt Asherman. I'm your host of this podcast. And this is a podcast that explores sports from many, many different directions. We've talked to professionals. We've talked to people who coach Little League teams. Today, we've got a special guest, Frank Kolarek, who's an old friend of mine and the founder and CEO of a spectacular program called League of Dreams, which Frank will tell us all about. And Frank is an old baseball player. If you've been following this podcast, you know I get a lot of old baseball players on here. We played the same position, catcher, but he was good. He made it to AAA, and I had trouble getting out of the dugout. So, Frank, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy you joined us.
Kurt, thanks for having me. It's great to see you, my friend. And, anytime we can get together, it's always good.
That's true. That's true. Let's start with some personal stuff, Frank. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you ended up at the University of Maryland. How'd you get there? What sports did you play as a kid?
Sometimes when I start to think about it, I just can't even believe it myself. But here we are many years later. But I grew up in Baltimore City. I was a city kid. My baseball fields were schoolyards. Side streets and upbringing. Well, everything revolved around pretty much the school and the church.
Sure.
And, we had a ton of cousins that lived on this street and that street. So there was always plenty of people, and there was always somebody's mom keeping an eye on.
Yeah. That's our era, isn't it? I miss it because although the street that I live on, folks would take care of everybody else. But in our day, right, if you did something screwy, Mrs. Johnson down the street would call mom and say, by the way, I just saw Frank smoking a cigarette around the corner, and you'd be in trouble, right? So,
well, that's exactly how it went between the priests, the nuns, and the neighborhood moms.
Yeah.
You really had to we had to get some good hiding places,
Yes.
But but the neighborhood, but of course, sports was really our thing, whatever season. So I guess playing baseball, was something that was easy for me to gravitate to. I loved it. We played a lot of different versions depending on how many buddies you had or cousins. It could be a full game. It could be a game of strikeouts against the wall. But we loved playing. We play all day, and then we probably played for, Little League or organized ball at night. So, those neighborhoods were so special. But from that, growing, nowadays I watch the kids play in these, travel leagues, and they're traveling. They're going to North Carolina and a lot of places that we didn't see till much later. Our travel was probably to somewhere in Baltimore County. If we went from the city to the county, that was a road game. But no matter, we were playing with our friends, we were playing with our family, and we just loved to play.
It sounds like, we always sound like old timers who wish everything was like it was in the past. The one thing I wish young people could have today is schoolyard sports. That, as you said earlier, right, during the summer, we'd leave the house first thing in the morning, maybe come home for lunch, and towards dinner time, mom or dad would come yell and say, dinner's on. We'd been out all day, played baseball games with no right fielder, so a shank was an out, remember, and played against we did. And I think we had more interaction, and we played more than they do now. My grandson plays on the travel team. He plays a lot, but we played every day.
Played all the time. And I will say that there was also parts of that, you had to be pretty good or you were going to be picked last, or you may not be picked at all. And but we always would include one of the older kids, meaning older, like, 15 or 16, because they may have 50 cents or so to buy another ball.
Yeah.
If one roof.
Right.
So you had to have somebody always, you gotta have a funder, right? So we have somebody that could get another ball if you hit it on the roof.
Yeah.
And you talk about rules, hitting on the roof was an out because chances are you only had, 2 balls to play with. So you didn't want to start losing them. And I'll tell a quick funny thing was we always there was a kid across the street who was not very good. He was a good kid, friend, but he wasn't very good in base. But when the janitor would go on the roof to get all the balls we hit off of there once a month, he'd throw them in Chucky's yard. So
You got your
Chucky
balls
would,
back.
it looked,
Sure.
it
Yeah.
looked like, Dick's Sporting Goods. So of course Chucky had to play. So
He had the
so
ball.
we
Yeah,
would
I
try
was
to be.
lucky. I was lucky my father was a high school baseball coach. So he would bring now the baseballs were all scuffed and sometimes ripped and the laces coming out, but it didn't matter. It was round, mostly round, and you could smack it somewhere. All right, so you played sports growing up, played in high school.
Yeah,
And then you went to junior college before you went to Maryland, right?
I did. I went to it was Catonsville Community College, which was a nearby county, and it really, junior college is not right for everybody, but it's really right for a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
I
Yep.
I did not, recruiting was different then. There was no internet and portals and things like that. So, if you weren't a top player, nobody was going to really see you and offer up scholarships and things like that. So the junior college path for me was key because I could keep playing at a next level.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my friends were with me from high school, and it was very competitive. So you're playing good baseball, you're learning, and so 2 years at a community college, I started. I had a good 2 years, and from that, I had the opportunity to go to Maryland University after that. So, and go in as a junior and start and have two good years at Maryland. So I was a late bloomer, I guess. If
Yeah.
I'm looking at evaluating myself, I went from kind of a suspect to a prospect, but really, love to play.
And you
So
played the only position facing the right direction, right? You were a catcher.
no,
Everybody else is facing the wrong direction. We faced the right direction as a catcher.
and it's funny, Kurt, because I didn't start catching until I went to junior college.
that
So
right?
I was kind of a third string third baseman in high school. I could knock them down and throw them out. I had a good arm, but I should have realized that I was not a third baseman. But I caught in the summertime in Legion ball, and that really became my position. I had you talk about mentors and families and coaches, but I had a coach. Our catcher didn't show up one night, so I went behind the plate. And of course, my arm was my tool, and I had some size. And he said, "How come you never caught?" Well, growing up in the neighborhood, my cousin was the catcher, so that was a
That's
position
it.
that
You
was
were
out.
Yeah. Cool.
That's right. So in high school, there were two other older kids that were catchers, so that was out. But in Legion ball that summer, it became an opening and then an idea. So when I went to junior college, that's when I tried it, and that really became my position. And you can remember this too. Scouts back then, if you went to these tryout camps that had 200 kids there, they're running them, throwing them. I remember like right now that they would say, here's the shortest line. The shortest line were catchers.
From behind the plate.
I mean, if you have 200 kids, there might be a dozen catchers, right. And the scouts saying, boys, this is the quickest way to the major leagues.
So
I thought I was on to something.
Frank, this is scary because I was a catcher starting at 9 years old, but I was not on the American Legion team. I was on a break-off team that was not as good. It was the kids who couldn't make the Legion team. The Legion coach was an old friend of my father's, but they didn't get along real well. And one day my father came out back. I was out back throwing a ball off a wall, and he said, Al Giuseppe, that was the coach, a cop in town, he needs you to catch for him today. And I said, what are you talking about? That's the other team. I can't just go catch for the Legion team. He said he got permission from your coach. And I went and caught a doubleheader in about 130-degree temperature, by the way. I caught a doubleheader, and I was on that team after that, right? And that was my position. That was now. All right.
Absolutely.
So you signed. What year did you sign with the A's?
Well, I played through my senior year, and actually went on to. I played really high competitive, good summer league ball. So, and I say that because when I would, even to this day, if I talk to young players or families or kids looking to keep following that path, summer league ball was where you can develop. The weather's better, you play more games, and it's just a place that, you really get a chance to play. But even a good college career, I was not drafted.
Yeah, I
I
read that in
basically
your
went
bio.
back one more summer,
found that
played,
interesting.
yeah, I went back in the Valley League and played again, and it was about 6 or 7 guys that I kind of played with in the summer. And we all thought this was our last hurrah. This was it, because if you miss out on the draft, it's tough to get signed as a free agent, especially as a senior. It just doesn't happen much. But anyway, I had another good summer, and a scout signed me in the off season. And, to this day, I can remember him saying, I can't promise you anything, but we sure do need catching in spring training. But he gave me a plane ride and some meal money. At that time, Kurt, I would have walked to Arizona to get a chance to play.
Of course.
So
Of course.
I went in, and it was a dream come true. I never looked too far beyond that.
No, that's great. And you made it up to AAA, which is just almost there, right?
I did.
Were you ever
Yeah, I got
were
as
you ever
close.
a call away? I mean, were you waiting to get called to come up?
I was as close as you could get without being there.
Wow.
And then I did get in spring training and played in a couple of games, like with the B team, or
Right.
How they would split them up.
Split squad.
Yeah. But I remember sitting on the bus. So you go in the morning, and the bulletin board, nothing's on the phone. The only phone you had was a pay phone hanging outside the clubhouse. But, you would go in, and it would be on a bulletin board what the assignments were. And then for me, I'm on the bus going to another field with, half big league guys. And all I kept praying for was for the bus to hurry up and leave, before.
In case they came to get you and say, we changed our mind.
Well, yes, and that happened all the time.
Sure.
And there's no feelings involved. It's like, Kolarek, get off the bus, or Ashman, get off the bus. That was about as sentimental as they would get. And so I just kept praying for that bus to leave. So I got in a couple of games in spring training games with, some big league guys, but I caught a lot of guys. I mean, I was in AAA for, a full season almost, and I caught it in AA for a couple years. So I caught some guys that got there.
That made it.
So I could get a pretty good glimpse of, that ability level, which was awesome.
Well, I know the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation. I'm going to ask you about it. Their gala is coming up, and they're honoring Ferguson Jenkins. The closest I got was catch a bullpen for Fergie Jenkins in 1971 during spring training. That's as close as I got, by the way. And then the next day, Vida Blue came down to throw against a low minor league team just to get loose. He threw 3 pitches, Frank, and I only saw one of them. And that's his true story. On my mother's grave, that's a true story. I saw him at a World Series game 15 years ago, and I jokingly went up to him and said, you remember when you struck me out in spring training? And he looked at me and said, who is this idiot coming here to tell me about? How am I going to remember some low minor? Anyway, that's as close as I got. All right, so your career's over. You go back to Maryland to coach? Did you, after you got released?
Well, I actually stayed in pro ball for a couple years. I didn't have a lot of options when I got done playing, and I certainly didn't have anything to do except read the letter when they said, you're no longer a player, you're released.
Yeah.
So I had, some good friends that got into coaching. So I stayed for a couple more years and coached in the minor leagues. So it was really interesting in the baseball world, because you can go from old to young if you take on different kind of jobs.
Sure.
So I went from, at the time, I was about a 27-year-old, considered an old catcher in the minors, to a very young coach. So I ended up coaching a couple years in A-ball with the A's with a really good friend of mine I played with for a bunch of years. And I really thought that was going to be my path, because now I had the experiences. I've been in that world. You know how to live off of $20 a week on meal money. and now you're getting $30. So, you can't be,
You're rich.
that bump
You're
in
rich.
pay. You think
Ours,
so?
ours was $5 a day in the Pioneer League, but and only when you're on the road, remember, right? You only got the meal money when you're on the road. They didn't give you meal money at home. So we lived on cigarettes, chewing tobacco,
Yeah.
bad beer, and
What?
McDonald's. I mean,
Yeah.
we had no money. So, all right. So you're coaching there.
Yeah.
Did you go from there to coach at Maryland, or were there stops in between?
Well, I ended up stopping in between with some scouting.
Oh, that's right. You
So
told
I
me
ended
that.
up,
Right.
I ended up coaching a couple years, and then had met Dorothy, who ended up being my wife, and
And probably the only reason you're still here, by the way. Keep going. It's okay. We all know that.
There's a lot of only reasons with her, that's for sure. I will say this, that my poor wife at that time, we knew each other growing up in the neighborhood. That's what's crazy. And knew each other growing up, and re-met in our late 20s, and she had two little daughters. They were 3 and 1. So my life changed, certainly for the best it could ever change, very quickly. I went from me first to fourth place in one I do. I mean, it was it was all about me and baseball and running around in that world.
Let me interrupt you for a second. I don't think people realize when you have, maybe people do understand it, but when you have a dream like we had to be a Major League Baseball player, which is my dream from 9 years old, and I'll bet yours is pretty close to the same thing. It's pretty difficult to swallow when you realize it's actually really over. I got released in spring training, so they came, and I came into the clubhouse, and they said, we're sending you home, kind of thing. But it's hard to explain how devastating that is when that was all you ever cared about, or mostly what you cared about, except your family and your church and school, that kind of stuff. Difficult when you get that letter.
It truly is. And no matter what your situation is, if you realize the writing on the wall, or you still think, you're one call away, it's tough, because, one of the toughest places to be in anything is close.
Yeah.
And I think that's the world you live in baseball. You're always, and you've seen it happen. I mean, I watched it happen with my son. I mean,
well, now
but
let's touch on that, because you at least got the continued professional experience, because Adam played, how many years did Adam played? 9 or 10 years in the big leagues, didn't he? He had 9 or 10 years.
Well, he ended up playing 14 years of professional ball. And he had about 7 years of big league, up and down, total of about 4 years of full service. But it took him 8 years to get there. So He really paid the price. Yeah. But those sort of stories can happen, but I was not one of those guys. I was, the plane ride and the Big Mac. And then meeting my wife and looking at a family happening, I had to make some different decisions based on where my life was going, which is really the core of what happens with any player. No matter what, that's what it comes down to. So scouting, became my avenue to stay in the game, get a full-time job, have some benefits. And out of all the different jobs in baseball, scouting, I felt, could allow me to control my schedule a little bit.
Oh.
So if I was getting ready to have a family, because when you're a player, that's different. But if you're a coach, basically you're going to get that schedule, and you're going to know exactly where you are for about 6.5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not home very much. But as a scout, I was able to go see a kid play, but be home the next morning to maybe take my children to school, or not miss a game or a recital, that kind of stuff. But that was to me. So I ended up scouting. I took a job with Milwaukee and scouted full time. And that was a whole nother journey with scouting.
I'll bet there's some stories there.
It doesn't end.
Remember in those days, the other thing about scouting in those days, or in our day when we played, I'm not sure it was when you were scouting, is every team had their own scout. So if you had anybody on your team that was any good, you could have 20 guys behind the backstop with remember they used to borrow the speed gun from the police department to check speed of the, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
all right, so you go, so you're done with that. You're married. You've now got a couple of kids. You're coaching in Maryland. You eventually end up at the Special Olympics. Was there
Yeah,
stuff in between, or did you go
well,
from coaching there?
I think the main thing in between was that I left pro ball to work at the University of Maryland. I was going back. I got my degree. By the way, my grades were a whole lot better when I wasn't at the batting cage all day in college. And but I got my degree. The head coach was retiring, who was my coach when I played. So I was his captain. We were close. He knew of my situation of getting married with a family. So I was going to be a college baseball coach, and that was going to be it. It was perfect. I grew up in Baltimore. I was at my university. I had success. I had pro baseball. I was going back to my college to live my life with my family. And on the way, I was there during the Len Bias situation. So basically, all the groundwork was laid. It was a paperwork situation that the job was mine. And on the way from that paper, going from this side of the desk to that side of the desk, Len Bias tragedy happened. And that was basically the beginning of the end of what was going to be my baseball career coaching at Maryland. My coach, who was my mentor, did not get his job. So in essence, he was going to retire and be an associate athletic director. That's where you would go
Right.
after retirement if you were a loyal employee or soldier of a university. He was going to take that job. I was going to be the day in, day out coach. And it was a beautiful plan.
So he didn't get his, so you didn't get yours.
Yeah, wow. I didn't get mine. So I stayed about 3 or 4 more years. It was really a shame because of how Maryland was drawn in. Maryland was big enough where they could make an example of them. If something happens at one of the other universities that's in the middle of nowhere, they don't, the press can't get in. They're not going to be able to cover the story the way they are when DC and Maryland are so well aligned. And there was no games going on. So these sort of things can just, they can just get out of control.
Cascade. Yeah.
That's right. They can get out of control. So I stayed a couple more years, but all along the way, I was doing volunteer work with children with disabilities. So when I was a young player, when I coached, when I scouted, I was touched by working with children in different areas of the country with disabilities and accessing baseball wherever I was as a player, a coach, and a scout. So I was getting ready to take the Maryland job. So I reached out to Special Olympics like I've been reaching out to other groups for, 15 years or so in pro ball, and said, I'm going to be the next baseball coach at Maryland. This is what I've done. We want to open our doors for your athletes, and this is what I can do as the head coach, and made, again, some great plans. So I did not, so the job didn't happen. I stayed a couple more years, and now, but I was, married with my family, and then my son was born. So now I have 3 children, and Special Olympics was growing their sports programs. So they offered up a part-time position for me to come in and, basically oversee their softball program. And this was at the international office in Washington, D.C. So leaving Maryland, I got back into some part-time scouting. I was teaching. I was doing lessons at night, and I took this part-time job at Special Olympics. So now I have 4 children and about 5 jobs.
Well, in those days we weren't paid so well either. All right, so now take us to the birth of League of Dreams, and just for our viewers and listeners, League of Dreams is a sports program, predominantly baseball and softball, though you're expanding a little into other sports. But it's for people with special needs that could be any special need. You could be deaf, you could be in a wheelchair, etc.
Blind,
So
yeah.
tell us how League of Dreams was born.
Basically, I then put the next 10 to 15 years in with Special Olympics. So I was at the international office. We were doing things around the country. We had international competitions. It was the big leagues in that industry. And then worked 5 years for the state office. I ended up back in Baltimore City, where I grew up, and ran programs in Baltimore City, which was, that's wild. But I can't, you summarize 15 years of like 2 sentences, but you can imagine, Coach. And so to that end, I learned a ton about the disabled sports world. And so I had my baseball life, and now I had this life working with people with disabilities. So League of Dreams was basically an idea that was created out of, 40 years of baseball and working with kids with disabilities. So, and I think what I wanted to consider was that if I could start my own, could I then open up a program that would embrace all disabilities? Special Olympics certainly is, internationally renowned organization, but they're predominantly working with a segment of the disabled population.
Right.
Right. So when I was there, it was individuals with mental retardation or intellectual disabilities. Now it's cognitive disabilities. But a child with cerebral palsy, with cognitive, nothing's wrong cognitively. They wouldn't be eligible for Special Olympics, only under like a unified programs. Or we have a big program now with League of Dreams that works with beat baseball. So again, that
tell our listeners and our viewers what that is, because it's fun.
It's basically for children and adults with that are blind or have some form of visual impairment, and they play with a ball that basically will have a pin in it. You pull the pin out, and it makes a beeping sound, and they try to hit it. And it's a fascinating game. And then they run to a base that beeps also. So an interesting side part of this is not only the skill it takes, but also that you need to be quiet while it's going on. So typically at a ball game, you have people cheering and yelling and everything going on, but it's, you ask for quiet so they could feel the ball and hit the ball. It's so much fun. So it's those kind of groups that we've partnered with over those years. So that's how League of Dreams began. This is our 24th year. And we basically, created it and started out with just working with some local families. And we worked with like 17 families our first year, big marketing budget, all that stuff, Kurt.
Yeah, big budget. Big budget.
Tell this parent, tell that parent.
Yeah, big budget. Hey, can you tell these people down the street about this? Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
How many people are you serving now?
Well, over the 23 years, we've added them up, and we impacted almost 31,000.
Wow.
And that's about 33,000 volunteers. I'm often reminded by my partners, Adam Kolarek and Mike Bordick, who help me all the time, of the value of the experience with our volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, we started out, as using baseball because that was our wheelhouse as a platform for the children and adults with disabilities. So the difference with our program is that we adapt the game to meet the needs of the player. So it's all about the success, taking the courage to walk up to home plate, try to hit a ball, and take off for first base, and your parents and family and people cheering for you. I mean, that's how simple it comes down to.
I know you know this, but the Ripken Foundation, Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, helped us reconstruct the baseball field at Springfield at my college and the softball field. And as part of it, we built an ability field right on the college field in right field. So we think it's the only one in the country, a college field that's a minor league quality field. And I love going back to it. They use Miracle League. I love going back and the experience. And what I'm trying to get to is the value to the volunteer probably doesn't match the value to the athlete, but it's damn close.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that has been just as much of a driver as giving these children and adults with disabilities this experience. We just always say, even if it's for a day or maybe we have leagues or whatever it is, it's like that big league experience. It's the same feeling you and I had strapping the gear on, being in a field and having that feeling of being a big leaguer for your moment. And that's what we try to extend to these children. And our volunteers are kids of all ages, people in corporate walks of life, but also the high end athletes that are college players, pro players. I've seen the best of them break down with the experience of being with our children. And the realization that I had, about 50 years ago as a young minor league player, that I was very blessed, that I was probably taken for granted some of the things that were a part of my life. And I had the opportunity to share that with people that had no opportunity like I did. So it certainly did enhance my perspective. It probably helped me out more than I could have ever helped out other people. So the inception was baseball. The key was partnerships. Cal Ripken Sr. has been a partner for 20 years. Major League Baseball alumni has been an active partner for almost as long. And then the partnerships with where our population is. If it's schools, if it's little league associations, it doesn't matter. We've developed some curriculum that, we have a game plan that we go in. It's not rolling out the balls. I take very serious the compliments that we would get about, we have stations and we develop, the swing and the proper way to hold a bat and run to the bases. And then they play a game to have the experience.
It's amazing program.
We've had a lot of that.
I bet you have.
And
What's the future look like, Frank? What's
I think
down the
over
pipe?
down the last couple of years, we've expanded to also have, softball, which has always been side by side with us. So you get the boys and the girls. And then other sports. I mean, we have a strong relationship, for example, with the community college.
Mm-hmm.
There's hundreds of children with disabilities that go to a community college to further their education or their certification programs or job training. They don't have sports. They may have had it in high school, but they don't have it in college. So we've partnered up with community colleges here in Maryland and offer our programs. And it's great because it's a built-in infrastructure with volunteers that are student athletes matched up with students with disabilities. So it's allowed us to expand, not just getting the baseball team involved, but the softball team and the basketball team and the soccer team. And seasonally, we offer different programs that way. So we've expanded into other programs, kind of utilizing the partnerships contacts. We also offer a water safety program. We've had a program with the YMCA. A lot of times during the course of a day, those pools could be empty or only half full. So we can work with local special ed schools and the YMCA to bring our children over to have experiences. And I've, a couple grandkids now, so the value of learning water safety is huge. And to watch a child with autism, to overcome his fear to get in the water, to overcome his fear of holding his breath and putting his head underwater. It never gets old. And then the last part, so we kind of have these three pillars now: the sports clinic side, the water safety side, and the third, STEM is a huge program in schools across the country. The Cal Ripken Sr. Foundation has led the way. We've watched how they've developed their programs for, the general ed students. We have written a curriculum. Kelly Spino, she still works as our director of education, and wrote a curriculum that would have adaptive curriculum for children with disabilities to participate in STEM. So it's very exciting, and it also allows us to now have a place in the classroom, the gymnasium, and the fields. And one kind of can fuel the other one.
Yeah.
You may have a contact with a program that says, oh, you do STEM. So we've opened about 4 STEM centers. One's out west, one is in Baltimore City, and 2 are here in Annapolis and Catonsville, with general ed, with special ed students in the class, or special ed schools that's designed for them.
That's
so
fabulous.
It's all about given the opportunities that any kid will.
So you've come a long way from taking baseballs out of the gutters on the roof next to your house. It's a pretty amazing story, actually, Frank, to see where you've come. And now you're doing such unbelievable work with people who so desperately need the connection, the opportunity to be with others, to play a sport, to hear people cheering for them. That's the when the Miracle League up in Springfield, the thing that's the most unbelievable is when people are cheering, because they don't have people cheering for them. So, well, Frank, go ahead.
It's so basic. The needs are always going to be there. And what we've been able to do is hang in there long enough. And I got to say, I've been around great people. I know, look, you've helped me out a lot, Kurt. I'm always appreciative of that blessing. And then, I got Mike Bordick, who was a Hall of Famer with the Orioles, my son, Adam, my family, my wife, they've all made that commitment to get us where we are. And it's getting a lot of fun now because we're really starting to drive this thing as a business, where we can. I learned the hard way. It doesn't live off of love.
No.
So,
yeah.
Just you would think it would, but
it should probably, but it doesn't. You're right.
No,
got to pay the bills.
But it's okay. That's the new challenge. But to get some grant funding, to watch how that works and put it into practice, it's still as motivating as ever. It sure is.
Well, Frank, I tell you, I'm proud of you as a friend, certainly proud of what you've done with League of Dreams, what you've done your entire career. It's amazing how we came out of these back fields in little towns, and yours in a rather big town, and did okay for ourselves, didn't we? And we wish you nothing but the best of luck with League of Dreams, with those grandchildren of yours now and children of yours. And we so appreciate you coming on the podcast. And appreciate all you're doing for all the people that you're serving.
Well, you're a good friend, and it means the world to me. And I appreciate bringing me on and giving us a chance to tell our story and get the word out. And it's very inspiring. And if anyone has a chance to come see us, I'd highly recommend it. It would be the best thing you do that day.
Is it leagueofdreams.org?
Yes, it is. leagueofdreams.org. It'll probably come up Baltimore sports or Baltimore baseball. And you can find us, and we'll get back to you if there's some opportunity. It's been a lot of fun to be in the big leagues with them, clinics at Camden Yards, at the universities, and then on the local fields. That element fits in a lot of places.
Well, Frank, we're proud of you, and we appreciate you coming on. So that's it for this episode of Sports Talk. We appreciate Frank Kolarek coming on and telling us the story of League of Dreams and all the other things he's done in his life. And I'm Kurt Asherman, signing off for now, and we'll see you next time. And until then, keep swinging.